So at the time when you were first introduced to Rene Girard himself in the 70s, did was the comprehensive theory of mimesis well developed in those earlier works with violence and the sacred, as you had mentioned?
When he arrived, I think the most obvious or public side of his work was imitation, really.
Mm,
That I think he came to this also by accident. You know, he was a grad student. He came after the war. He came to America for all kinds of reasons, to Indiana University, and was a grad student in French. And they assigned him to teach certain great novels, and that was not his field at all. And he mentions that two or three of them he'd never read. And I think he found the unity of those great works. And so that's where the first book, Deceit, Desire, and the Novel, comes from. So that's basically what he was bringing with when he came to MSU in 1973. Very quickly, Deceit, Desire, and the Novel was about how, despite characters thinking romantically that they decide what they want and they're autonomous, they're not. And the great novelists recognize that we are not autonomous, that we copy. We, among other things, we copy our desires from others. So at the time that Girard arrived on campus, that was in the bag, and everybody knew that. And it was a very well regarded book. But he came to talk about the plague in literature. And so I think this is the ground he had already covered, but it was the first time for us. How do you take those ideas of imitation into a more interesting ideas of social movements and so on? So if people copy each other all at once, you can end up with a kind of frenzy, where it's a mob action. And so what he was trying to do when in the paper that he read to us was to talk about how literature studies these frenzies. And once again, certain great writers understand that plagues are essentially human calamities. And that goes all the way forward to his last book, the book on Clausewitz, Battling to the End, where at this time he was identified as a Catholic,
mm,
openly, publicly as a Catholic, that the prophecies against the deluge, coming at the end. These are descriptions of what humans will do to themselves. So that's about at the point where he was, that we were getting this. I hadn't read La Violence yet. We were getting where you would take these ideas.
mm.
So as I would
Yeah.
say that's what it was. He was a theorist of the novelist, very interesting, French from Hopkins and so on.
Hmm. Yeah. So at some point there tends to be this transition, at least in the way that Girard's thought is received, where it's taken from the realm of literary analysis
Yeah,
and
yeah,
brought out into the world as sort of a grand theory
yeah.
of mimesis. And I think one of the changes in society that's playing a role in sort of the resurgent interest in Girard that has happened within the last decade or so is the role of the internet. The internet seems to me to be a kind of special infrastructure that accelerates or intensifies the effects of mimetic contagion in a way that has never been possible in human history before. The way in which ideas can spread among groups of people, even people that don't know one another and are unrelated. It used to be that ideas had to spread, either locally or perhaps through a text, maybe over the radio for the 20th century, but that was about it. There wasn't a whole lot of other ways for things to spread, and now they spread as memes through the internet. But this creates a whole new domain, a sort of meta domain in which we can continue to have this kind of imitative behavior, this cascade of imitating events. Um, have you personally, as editor of Contagion, or just in general with your public presence, have you noticed a kind of renewed interest in Girardian ideas?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I intended. So I have to be careful about the observation because that's what I decided I wanted to do.
Mm,
You know, beyond just skiving off his ideas for my own work. And it was a big change for me to instead be absolutely committed to getting him a wider audience. And it's tricky the way it works. I think you're right. I think the internet is fascinating. And when Girard finally started talking about contemporary events, he said things are getting better and worse at the same time. You know, that over time we invented really the social institution of hospitals. I mean, hospitals, really. So, I mean, there's that, always going forward, taking better and better care of people and also destroying them with more efficiency. So I think the
mm,
internet is right at the center of that. And it's one of the, I mean, it is the medium for me seeing how far Girard has spread. So I see copies of articles, you know, like on these various subscription services. Lots of people just writing about Girard. And I was also, I still am, I suppose, a member of Imitatio, and
mm,
that's another part of my life where the scheme was again to get Girard a wider audience, to get more people to read his work. And as an academic, I knew very little about how to spread ideas, except this one idea, which is part of the journal and the book series. Get to the teachers, you know, get to the teachers because they have the audience, and if you can convince them that mimetic theory helps them understand their own discipline better, that will take place in the classroom. So I think we've been successful there, and the wider spread. Uh, Cynthia Haven's biography has been a big deal for spreading mimetic theory, and that's a complex subject. She is not an academic, so I regard her as a grace, you know, as an unforeseen benefit. But she had written about Girard. Renee told me she's the
mm,
only one who ever got him into a major newspaper in America.
mm,
And so I had talked to her and said, you should write a popular book about Girard because we like that. And uh, she has written several other books. There's hardly a proper term for her. I suppose you call her a woman of letters, but that sounds kind of strange in America. But she's not. She has some connections to Stanford, but basically she's an independent writer. And she got us attention in places that we never had, that even places I've been trying hard to get into. So she was reviewed in the TLS and so on, and she sold a lot of books and got a lot of interest in Girard by telling a human story, a human version of Girard's career.
mhm,
So yes, the internet is really important. It's, you know, it's the better, it's the worst and the best of us. Just this morning, I was reading in the newspaper that the minority, the 200 million Muslim minority in India. So what the hell, 200 million? So, you know, you just go to the internet and say, well, you know, this year, how many people are in India? And the population is just, no, it gave me more than a brush of modesty to know exactly how big India is.
mhm,
So, so yeah, and the internet is a place where people write stuff for you. They'll never get credit for it. So
mhm.
yeah, it's I wish I knew better how to use it, but certainly it's important.